Wednesday, 3:02 p.m. Not getting a damn thing that the stat ball man is spitting out at me. So I flew on down the chalk, took a little walk outside to where my friends from school will play. I don't know, maybe so, it's just another day. Hanging at the quick stop, grab a Slurpee and a Twix, I'm on my way. Crossing lady stops me, brings the lecture now, and the hell's your head? My mind can't help but figure the Alice and the finger, and I ran along with nothing more to say. It's alright, really tight, it's just another day.
What is going on, everybody? I hope that intro gets you guys as pumped as it gets me. Big thanks to our buddy Jason Morey and his band at the time, Talented Losers, for providing that track for us. It's called Just Another Day, and school is not just another day. It's the next day of the rest of our lives. Made that up. Hey, I do want to thank everybody for tuning in. We do hope to evoke some thought, and do not forget to jump in, hit that chat bar, let us know what you're thinking, comment. If you're watching live, go ahead and click that share button now, get some more people tuning in, let them know what's going on. And then don't forget, if you miss it, you can hit us on the podcast. You can hit our podcast on any of the channels where you someone just sent me a private chat, and I don't know why, but it's all good. You can hit us on our podcast. You can download it anywhere you down your podcasts, and make sure, if you are doing that, leave comments and subscribe, ring the bell, whatever it is you do. All right, tonight I wanted to tell a story about a new teacher that I had come into our program one year, and they were a rookie teacher, and so what we started doing was during pre-planning, we just started updating the teacher and trying to let them know what was going on in our class and how it worked and what we did. And so I thought the easiest way to do this would be to talk about the menu that we ran as part of our restaurant. So we, in the program, we have a student-run restaurant. And so in order for this teacher to be involved in our program, I figured the best way, we would get rid of some of our menu items and let this young blood, this new blood, this rookie teacher have some input and bring some new menu items to the table, kind of making him feel part of the team. So we didn't have to change any of the menu items on the menu, but again, went over the program, showed him the menu as it existed, even let him erase the menu items that he thought were outdated, and then we started going over what we would replace it with. And so, again, the menu, I explained to him, the menu is part of how we run our program. We have the menu, we let the students run the restaurant, and this way we can ensure that the students are not only grasping the objectives, but they can also perform them, which is a different level of that understanding. So we gave him the what, the how, and the why, if you will. And, that's ultimately what we want to give all of our students. So through this process, I was questioning the instructor and, through his menu creation, why do you want to add that one? What do you think it's going to lend to the student? Just kind of elevating his game as we were going through this process. But ultimately what I was doing is I was including him in our team, making him feel part, allowing him to have some ownership. And at the end of the day, it did exactly what it was meant to do. Now, when we talk about giving him that directive and allowing him to be part and making him feel included, ultimately, this is basically the whole breakdown of what student-centered learning is supposed to be. This wasn't some miraculous revelation I had or idea. I went back to my time in industry, had to be around 19, I know, 19, man, I'm not that old. Maybe 2003, 2004. My boss at the time came to me, and he was in charge of 60 some restaurants. And he had a project brought to his table, and he included me in the building of that project. And it brought me closer into that management team and part of that. So when I started doing this with this new teacher, it was more so to make him feel part of the team. But as we started developing, it allowed that learning to take place through the processes that naturally just came out. And that's, again, student-centered learning. When we talk about student-centered learning, we want to get them involved. We want to make them feel part. We want to let them be part of the process, all the way from planning to assessment. And that gets them to personalize it and understand it. But at the end of the day, we can't forget to let them know the why. And cool thing, the why could be different for every student in there. So we got to keep it all in mind. We can't rely on the old school because I said so. You know, I mean, that's worked for so many years, right? I mean, think back to your parents. You need it for the test. If that's not a pain in the ass, stupid answer, I don't know what is. We don't need anything to take a test. We need everything for life. And just because it's important to you and for whatever reason doesn't mean it's going to be important to the student. So we got to make sure we can turn that. And we got to make sure we help them understand not just the what, not just the how, most importantly, the why. So we can do this in many ways. We've practiced it in many ways in my world. And, you know, what better person to bring into this discussion than our co-host, Christine Strombaum, Dabsy, who has lived this in multiple arenas. She was a student. She came back as a TA. And now she works with our foundation endlessly, and we can't thank her enough. Dabsy, what's going on?
A real hello. I thought I was commenting in the real chat and not a private chat.
I was like, what the hell? Christine sent me a hello, and I'm like, I'm looking at you in the green room, and I'm looking at the chat bar, and I'm like, because it just says first name, it doesn't say anything else. I'm like,
so
right,
funny.
is my sister watching this? Because her name's Christine
Hello,
too.
people of Facebook.
It's all good. It's all good. You know, Dabsy, I think back to you know, the lesson with that new instructor.
Yes.
It's nothing different than we do with students in the classroom. And I don't think that's a knock on the instructor. I think that more so talks about the high level of expectation that we set in the classroom for every student, and then making them the center of the learning process, kind of pushing them through into that uncomfortable zone where they're forced to learn. What are your thoughts on back in the day when you know, you came in and we're just throwing things at you, and you're going from, you know, just being part of the process of the restaurant to basically running the restaurant portion of our class, which was a big part of our curriculum. How did it make you feel? What were you thinking about? And can you touch on that?
It's hard for me to go back that far, about as far back as this profile picture you've got up here. I appreciate it. But one thing
that's TV magic.
When I was reflecting on the topic today, I was going back in my mind and thinking about how the setting of our classroom in particular was different than maybe other classrooms that I experienced, whether it was in middle school or high school or post-secondary. And I thought about how week one, we're in there, and a lot of times we are setting up the kitchen to open, like we are starting right, like rolling. And a lot of times when you first walk into a classroom, you go over the syllabus for the entire week. but you had us writing mission statements, and not just mission statements for ourselves individually, which we did, but also for our team, whether we were working in front of the house or back of the house, and collectively working together to make a mission statement. And that was something so interesting to me because the goal wasn't necessarily passing an exam at the end of the semester, but it was working towards goals together as a team. So that was something that I reflected on. I thought that was really interesting. And it's intimidating to walk in to a classroom that's functioning as a restaurant. Really, it was an Outback Steakhouse, is what it felt like to 14-year-old Christine. And you have veteran students in there that are maybe juniors and seniors in the same block classes with sophomores. So that was an interesting dynamic as well. And really, I look to them as role models to see, okay, this is someone who's really excelling.
We got to go back from the role model because,
Right.
I understand that you look up to these students, but I mean, at that point, it's student teaching student. It's just part of the process of what we do. And, I love going back to that teacher-centered model, which, for years is what we see, and it's what we make fun of on TV. And I mean, I might be old and the movies might be old, but Ferris Bueller's Day Off, you got Bueller, the guy standing in front of the room, or even Mr. Man and Mr. Hand in Fast Times at Ridgemont High, talking about it's his classroom and whatever the case may be. But, you got that teacher in the center standing up, doing all the talking and all the learning. I mean, all the sharing of the expected learning. But in the student-centered model, the students teaching other students, when you're able to teach, you're exuding mastery. So as we look at the student-centered model, when you come in as that freshman, you're part of that team. You start your own learning at your level, personalized for what you need. And those upper level students are now delivering it,
Right.
extenuating and pushing their learning farther by teaching, and every student's different. So now they're reaching different people, and now they're learning different techniques while training you yours. It just extends that learning to levels that you can't measure on a piece of paper.
Exactly, which is something that I think is so unique and cool about that classroom experience that I had. And I think it's really part of what brought me back year after year into the program, because I felt empowered that first week. And coming from a traditional learning environment where, I didn't really have that great of a reflection back on group projects, because a lot of times in group projects, maybe there's one person that does a lot of the work. Usually that might have been me. But when you get put into a classroom experience like this, where it's collaborative, students working with students towards something together, and a lot of times that hierarchy of students, veteran, freshmen, is switching up week to week, which is a lot of fun. So I think being put in a situation like that, where we're all working towards a common goal, and finding what our own personal goals are and what we're good at. Maybe someone's really great at the creative side one week, and the next week they get to try on a leadership role, and the next week they get to do problem solving, which I know a lot of that behind the scenes is probably planned by the instructor, and we just don't see it in real life.
It's funny you say that, because going back to the menu writing, I already knew what I wanted on the menu.
Yeah.
And we talked him right into what we wanted on the menu, and let him believe it was his. And again, that's part of teaching, It's like the amazing server who walks out to the table and sells those last 3 specials because the chef needed them out of the kitchen. Exactly. And makes those people feel special because they got it. I mean, you have to know how to do that as an instructor. And
it was really cool, and it's smooth, and you don't realize it's happening, which is also cool.
I remember another instructor. He had actually been in our program, came back to teach, And that just makes me even more old because, there's more of you teaching now than I'm going to share on TV here or wherever we're at.
I think
But,
that's also a testament.
um, you know, one of my buddies was on campus one day, and we were reminiscing about working in industry, and he said, "So do you ever do anything like Twan, that was our chef, used to do to us?" Man, and I go, "Yeah, watch this," and we walk in the kitchen, and I just start yelling, ranting, and raving about nothing at all. Who's cleaning this place up? And we walk out of the kitchen, and we just start laughing. And here's that new instructor. And he's like, "What's so funny? What's so funny?" And my buddy says, "Nah, chef was just in there yelling and screaming about nothing, and everybody got all worked up like they were really in trouble." And the instructor starts laughing. He's like, "Oh, wait a minute. Did you used to do that to us?"
Wait a
I'm like,
second.
all the damn time, man. You got to stay on your toes. So
Yeah,
it
was
is all
super
planned.
cool.
It is all
And there were
planned.
tests. I know there were tests now looking back on there was a piece of trash on the center of the dining room floor, and to see who would take the leadership role to pick it up first or how many people walked by it. And those kind of things stick with you. And I think it's the responsibility of the teacher to decide, what do you want your students to leave that classroom with at the end of the semester? Is it knowing the mother sauces, or is it having some life skills? And a lot of that's being a part of the team and finding a place where you belong and wanting to come to school.
We talk a lot on here, and I try real hard to say we all the time. I'm very lucky. I get to be recognized. People have recognized me for the things we do, and I do know that I cannot do it alone, and I don't do it alone. There is a huge team, usually involved with everything that I have going on. And you're sorely missed right now, Dabsy. But anyway, I digress. I was talking with some of our team this week about pushing that learning and knowing what you want students to come out with. And it's funny that you brought that up because, you say the mother sauces, and you could say any of the objectives or student standards that are set out by the state or FLDOE, whoever's putting these out, telling us what the standards are that we have to teach. So, you could say, well, that's what we have to teach. And yeah, that's great. And that's what they're going to put on an assessment and measure you by. And I'm going to tell you right now, I don't give a damn about assessments. I never have. And it's absolutely hysterical. If you were to go look up my evaluations and their public record, go feel free to do that. I've been scored poorly on assessments by almost every evaluator I've had. And I'm saying right here, go find out who their names are and go look at their criteria. I tell them all, you don't know what an assessment is, and that's why you score me poorly. I assess my students almost continuously during their time in my classroom through questioning. I was talking with our crew and getting ready for tonight, and one of the things we were talking about was, student-centered learning, not just being about the student in the driver's seat, but also, through questioning, what we try to do is personalize that learning, and not just personalize it as far as, where are you, what do you want to do, where do you want to go? Like Dabsy, I wholeheartedly believe you were front of the house the entire time you were with us. I felt that that's where you were going to excel, and if we took that and we utilized that to teach you, we would be better than if we threw you behind a hot grill with fire and yada yada yada. You still had to do that.
Right.
You still had to do that. But when we start personalizing the learning, meaning we understand the student as a whole, now we can really start pushing them into directions that just way off the chart. So when we look at the questioning techniques, yeah, we might be talking about the mother sauces or whatever. And so it all starts with that standardized We're talking about the mother sauces. We're teaching you bechamel, and all of a sudden we twist and turn, and we're like in left field talking about Outback and the way they make their sauces and the way they deliver it and how their business model runs, because at some point you worked at Outback during your time in our program. But through that simple question of mother sauces and the questioning and pushing your learning and extending your learning, those assessments right there are happening instantaneously. And just because of the understanding of the student, we're pushing you where you might not have ever gone. I mean, and not in a bad way. And I'm not condemning any other instructor, but I mean, I think that is the piece that teachers miss, the set apart. We gotta look past that objective, that standard, and realize that the student as a whole is a bigger than that mother sauce or that standardized recipe. Right. And make those connections and make them not just for Gabsy, but for the 30 other students in the room too, thereby teaching 30 classes all at once. And we're not even going to get into differentiation, where we got to start learning about your learning styles so we can deliver it to Dabsy the best way Dabsy receives, which is also done too.
Right.
So you put me on a tangent there. You got me going. Got on my soapbox.
I think the empowerment is so important, and keeping it, it's human. Learning is human, teaching is human, and taking that human element out of it is a lot of times what happens in a lot of classrooms that I've been in, and it makes you feel like a number, and it doesn't make me feel like on the board, on the work chart, I see Christine is running the hostess stand tonight, and seeing that name and seeing that I'm empowered to make decisions and see what to do there, and seeing that Joe is behind the hub and someone's in the kitchen and someone's leading baking and pastry. And then it changes week to week because you want to mix it up. But knowing that it's kind of like in kindergarten when someone's named the line leader, like you get something there. You know what's kind of expected from you, the minimum, and then you add your own like bit of spice to it, and that's where it gets really fun as a student to have that empowerment make.
You know, you said you go back to kindergarten and you talk about the line leader, and how fundamental is that, right?
Right.
But it's that empowerment, and you feel good. So if we were to take student-centered learning, one of the most basic fundamental deliveries of student-centered learning. All right, shoulder share with your partner right now. And you're expected to share whatever we're talking about with your partner. I've heard so many teachers, including this guy, that's so fundamental, that's so stupid. Why are we going to do that? But I want you to pause and think about it. How many times have you and I been in a meeting together, and the meeting's taking place, and we just, what the hell is he talking about? And you share, right? Or, I think that's dumb. Do you think that's dumb? Man, that's badass. And we just do it naturally. So when we schedule this and we plan this, is it fundamental? Absolutely. And if we're talking about something like, hey, let's talk about the colors of the crayons, pretty fundamental. But if we start talking about the big 8 allergens, and we talk about the impact on our customer base, we are raising the level of what we're talking about, and we're truly critically thinking when we start talking about these things. Now, if we shoulder share, it's just amplified even more, and we're taking that base fundamental strategy and just elevating it through the content.
Right.
So we gotta stop thinking that things are fundamental and start applying them properly so that we can amplify everything. And we don't have to every day, hey, shoulder share. But, you mix, you mingle, you throw things in, you salt and pepper, and you create the perfect storm so that we get an amazing learning environment.
Right. And I always felt that naturally there's other students and peers that you'll gravitate towards, but when you're mixing it up and shoulder sharing, quote unquote, with other people in the classroom, and maybe you're sat with a different group than you normally are, you have really interesting conversations that come out of it. And maybe you have a conversation on Monday when you're doing book work, and it comes into play on Thursday when you're working in the restaurant together. And that's a really interesting dynamic as well.
Reflection's huge. Reflection's huge. You talked about doing your book work and talking about it and shoulder share. And then you said, so when it comes to Thursday, maybe we have an easier situation. But what about looking back too? And when you say when it comes to Thursday, when you were in school, that was the day that we opened and operated the restaurant.
Right.
So the application came out.
The
But even after the restaurant, and I'm not going to make any stories. Something I didn't start doing until maybe 15 years into my career, incorporating a hard designed reflection into the process. Because if we don't reflect, we don't really understand how we can take the learning we had and move forward with it and synthesize it into other arenas. And that's where it just gets even, it's huge. It's huge. So, we can do that through questioning too in those mini assessments that we're doing every moment of the day. Take that, all you evaluators. Through those questionings, I like to go backwards to go forward. So if we run into a situation, whatever the case may be, and here's why I'm horrible, because if you had a problem right now, I think that I would jump right in and start. All right, well, what would we do here? Well, remember when this, and then what happened then? We just walk right through it, navigate right through it like it was nothing. But when it says, all right, give me an example, I'm like, man, let's phone a friend. Let's get somebody on the line. But when we do that questioning and we go back to that base level and then we start to build up, and hitting those objectives are easy at that point. Because everything we do is just embedded in the thing before and the lesson before and the lesson before. But once we hit that objective, now it's time to start extending again so that next time we come into a situation similar, we don't have to go back as far. But I think teaching that reflective process is equally as important as everything else. Because once you can begin to do that reflective process on your own, now you start advancing farther and farther, being able to make those connections and, as our buddy H would say, connect the dots. Synthesize the learning so that it's going across spectrum, and that's super high level. Key point though, if we're reflecting incorrectly, it's still incorrect. So we have to teach how to reflect. And that's something else that's tough. You keep putting me on these soapboxes, Dabsy.
Sorry. What's the point of having an agenda? I don't know.
Do we have an agenda?
No.
We do.
Maybe
Evoke
we should.
Thought. Evoke thought. That's our agenda.
Evoke thought. That's right.
Yeah, poke the bear and here, we'll do this. We'll change our thoughts here. Let's see if we can get this one up. All right, there we go. So we'll change. We'll play hard now.
Okay.
But it's funny. I say play hard, and I'm immediately going into. Even when we play, it had a purpose. I mean,
True.
It was just another tool to get everybody thinking and motivated and learning.
That's very true. Because I was trying to think back on how did we bring so many people from different backgrounds and that were driven different ways, different styles of learning, all into collaborate, all towards a certain goal. And a lot of times our goal at the end of the week, because we were that restaurant, and it could work for any type of classroom as well. When we broke down on Fridays, we would have Dance Party Friday. Was it a dance party? No. Was it the exact work that we would be doing anyways? Yes. Was there music on that made it a little more fun? Yes. And it was something so little that maybe chefs or other teachers are doing anyways on Fridays as their kids are catching up with work that they had. that they didn't finish for the week, or they're doing computer study, or they're breaking down like we would the kitchen and the front of the house. But just adding that element of, humanity to the
I
classroom.
don't know what the difference is when we call it detail clean and we have to drain a fryer,
Right.
or we call it disco dance party.
Yeah.
We put on some music and we have to drain a fryer.
It's all mental. It's all mental and fabulous. And
I'm
fabulous.
mental.
And
We know that.
it teaches you to kind of put a positive spin on the tough parts of life too. Because you're gonna have Fridays where you gotta drain the fryer in your
You know,
life.
another one of my
And you kinda
buddies
gotta
says,
make the best of
"You
it.
got sometimes you got to do things you hate to get to do things you want."
Yeah.
And we got to take the good and the bad, and it's just turning it. But at the end of the day, if you want to be, in our arena, you want to be a badass chef, you have to know how to take care of your tools, your equipment. You have to know when the oil's bad, and you have to know
Right.
how to change it, how to clean it, how to take pride in it. And all of these things are what comes out through those lessons that we just don't understand. And uh, it goes real quick from setting that high level of expectation to having you believe that high level of expectation, which goes back to our first podcast of creating the culture. So
Yeah.
um, just different ways of looking and thinking, I guess. I'd love to say we work magic, but we just know the expectation levels that student can achieve, and we try to help them get there.
Yeah. And it's a lot of work behind the scenes, and maybe it's not something that you can adapt all at once, and it takes time. But maybe if you start implementing one thing at a time in your classroom, you can see changes. And once you see positive changes in your students or positive changes in yourself and the way that you teach, maybe that can keep the ball rolling, to really adapt your classroom.
We I have a lot of conversations throughout the week leading up to the night we do this. Just to focus, because if you hadn't guessed, yeah, I'm everywhere. But we were talking about back to the personalized learning. We could say understanding the student, and I think a lot of teachers will say, "I understand my student," or we could say, "Know your student," and a lot of teachers will say, "I know my student." Just take away everything after you graduated, Dabsy. How many of your teachers do you feel knew you like I knew?
I mean, maybe
Just
two.
maybe me plus one or me plus two
Me plus you plus
in your
one.
in your whole career or your senior high career.
My senior and senior high.
That's not a lot.
No, it's not.
And how many students would you say that I knew at the same level which I knew you of my students?
It felt like everybody.
Yeah. And so when I was talking with some folks about this, and we were talking about knowing your students, and it's not just knowing your students, and we're not talking about, well, I've been observing Christine, and I think her learning style, that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about knowing the whole student, knowing that student's why, knowing their background, which helped develop that why, knowing their background, which may have put barriers in the way of learning, knowing the whole student so we can advance them through whatever challenges they have, accentuate the positives so that they build that self-esteem, not what we see in them, but they believe it in themselves, so that we can push that student to their learning capabilities. That's personalized learning.
Right.
That's what it's about. And when you can take the personalized learning, which by the way is absolutely exhausting. It's absolutely exhausting. And I don't say that with any disrespect to any of my former students, any of my current students, but it's exhausting. I mean, it really is. I not only get to revel in your successes, but I carry your baggage, your damage, and everything else too.
Yeah.
Um, but when you can take that personalized learning, understanding the student as a whole, add in the differentiated instruction, knowing their styles, knowing their modalities, so we can deliver it the way they need it delivered, and then create that student centered learning environment. You get all three of those balls up in the air and you're juggling them perfect. Man, the success that's going to come out is absolutely incredible. And I don't mean you're going to go home as a teacher and go, yeah. No, because you're going to go home exhausted, wore out, and beat up. And I go home a lot of days from doing what I do, hurting a lot worse than I did in the culinary kitchens. Um, it's just a reality. It's a different environment. It's a different weight on your shoulders. But when you see your students' successes and you get to sit in a room and talk about it, not just talk about it. Oh, hey, we had fun. But how can we take this and push it to other students? And that's what we're here for today, is to hopefully impact many more instructors and students down the road. That's when it's absolutely amazing. Not how I feel, what I see in people like Christine and Carlos. And I'm just going to stop right there because, I mean, you and Carlos have already had the argument, and I don't want to forget anybody, all the tons and tons.
Yeah. I can think
People.
about my class and the two classes that I came back to help when I was teaching. And I think everyone would say that they had a unique experience in the program. And that's really cool that you
Well,
didn't feel like you were just a number.
you know what? Numbers suck.
Yep.
Nobody wants to be a number.
Nobody does.
Nobody
Nobody
wants to.
does. And it's
Nobody.
hard to focus learning on student number one, student number two, student number three, um, without bringing that bringing
You
that
know,
name and the backstory.
we come in here and we sit here and we flap our gums and we'd love everybody to throw in that chat bar and throw their comments up there. If you're watching this on YouTube later, or you've downloaded the podcast and you're listening to it, throw some comments out there. Let us know your thoughts. If you're an educator, let us know some of your successes, some of your strengths, some of your weaknesses. Uh, what you think about what we're talking. We'd love to hear it. Um, Debsy, any final thoughts tonight?
I'm racking my brain to
I
see.
saw you taking lots of notes today.
I was, I get pumped up by this. I was also, honestly checking the lightning score, but but no, I have tons of notes. I have tons of notes. I don't want to forget anything because I was really excited about this topic, and I did type out. I might not have had an agenda, but I did have a ton of notes, and I think going back on other topics that we've already touched base on, building positive relationships from student to student within the peers because they're communicating, because they're working towards common goals. And it's so much more than, to me, it was so much more than group projects. It really is. I know everyone says teamwork, but it really was. It really was being a part of something bigger and giving you like a little hint of purpose. And for some people, it was more than that. And for me, it definitely was. But sometimes, especially as a teenager, you're going through so many different changes, trying to find who you want to be in that moment, in that chapter of your life, and finding a place where you belong or where you can be a leader. I never expected to be a leader. I'm an only child. I incredibly shy. And these things came with practice and trial and error. And once I got in
And
there,
they started on day one.
and it starts on day one, which is scary, but everyone else is doing it too. So you feel comfortable, like, all right, I'm just going to go with the flow and I'm going to do it for the 45 minutes that I have this class. And yes, I came back for 3 years and I felt strong doing that. But even in a classroom where I'm there for a semester or for 2 semesters, if I felt like a teacher truly saw who I was, I wanted to be there. And maybe that's being selfish, but it made me want to be there if I felt like the
It's your
teacher wanted
education.
me
You should
there.
be selfish.
Right. Well, that's
You
true.
know, we'll get on that soapbox later, but it's so sad that students don't own their own learning. You know, and it just gets me onto my final thoughts even stronger. You know, when I worked in restaurants and ultimately ended up, running the kitchen at night or during the day, a guest had no problem telling me if their food was cooked improperly or if it was received cold. Hell, if they just didn't like it. Um, or I had one guest tell the manager they just didn't like me. And we're just supposed to sit there and take it. And as a chef, we're expected to learn from that criticism and grow. That was 25 years ago. I couldn't imagine today with social media and Yelp and Google reviews. You're critiqued and assessed with the click of a button. Some guests complain, others don't. So you have to be on your game and you have to look for cues. You have to rely on your team. You have to read body language. You have to trust waiters, other managers to ensure that satisfaction's taking place. And as a guest at a restaurant, I think you expect that. You're paying me your hard-earned money to come eat my food, and I thank you for that, every one of you do. But you expect it because you're the guest and you're paying for it. So let me pose a different question. As an educator, our guests are those students in the seat. And whether they might not be, writing that check and swiping that credit card at the end of the experience, like a guest at a restaurant, the tax dollars or whatever are still paying our salary. And they're our guests. Why aren't we looking for those cues? Why aren't we looking to find out whether they're satisfied, unsatisfied? If they're not satisfied in our class, why aren't we asking why? And if they're not satisfied, they can't get up and walk to another class like they can leave my restaurant and go to a different one. Why aren't we helping them move to another restaurant? Why aren't we getting up and helping them find a class where they will be satisfied? So maybe the learning will take place. Why aren't we walking around looking for the visual clues? So often I hear us complain about our students. I want you to picture sitting in my restaurant, which, this might actually take place though. And you saying, I don't like this burger. And I come out and you're like, I don't like this burger. And I'm like, shut up, sit there and eat it. I mean, I might actually say that, but I would never say that to one of my students. I would never say that to one of my guests. We want to make sure they're successful. We want to make them grow. And if that's not what you're looking for, maybe you need to reevaluate your position. I hate to say that, but that should be all of our goals. And with that said, guys, my favorite part of our podcast, this goes out to all of you teachers out there. I joke, I laugh, I say, man, I hate teachers. I don't hate teachers because it's hard to do what we do. And I got nothing but mad love for every one of the educators out there. So much love. We've got a bash coming up that takes place in Hillsborough County, the Saturday at the end of our first week back at school. What better place to celebrate or commiserate that first week back at school than partying with the Voodoo Chef? Log on to the Voodoo Chef Facebook page. Grab your 20% discount. Type in the word early bird. Even when that goes away, teachers, you'll get a 20% discount. Just type in educator and you'll get that discount. Slippery When Wet band playing live. The Shift band playing live. Kitchen Killers playing live. Best burger competition. You get to taste them all. Come out, party like rock stars. Leave that education world behind. This one's for you, teachers. Dabsy.
I love it.
Much love.
Much love.
Till next month, guys. We'll see you.